Good afternoon, good morning, greetings around the nation and in the territories. I want to welcome you to the training session for the Social Services Block Grant. This presentation will provide an overview of the requirements for the post-expenditure report, a product that's due annually of all the states and territories. I see we have a few folks who are still joining us. We may want to give ourselves about 20 seconds while we allow others to join. I think we have a critical mass. At this time, we want to give you an opportunity to meet the members of the Social Services Block Grant Federal and Contract Support Team. The team members will introduce themselves, tell you the states and territories for which they have responsibilities, and we invite the states and territories to please join along when your specialist is introduced and enter your name and your state or territory as greetings in the chat function. I am Dr. Yolanda Butler, and I am a senior advisor in the Office of Community Services, and I work with the Social Services Block Grant Program. I'm going to turn it to my colleague, Janelle.
Thank you, Yolanda. Hello, my name is Janelle George. I am the OCS Deputy Director and also serving as the Acting Director of the Division of Social Services where the SSBG program is administered. I'll now pass it to Josetta.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Josetta Alexander, and I'm the newest member of the SSBG team. I'm transitioning from the Community Services Block Grant, or CSBG, within OCS, and I will serve as the SSBG Program Specialist for Region 3, which includes Delaware, DC, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and West Virginia, as well as Region 8, which includes Colorado, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Utah, and Wyoming. I look forward to working with you. I'll pass it on to Josiah.
Hey team, I'm having some camera difficulties today, so unfortunately you can't see me, but I'm Program Specialist Saya Stanton Brooks, and I help out with Regions 1, 6, and 7. These include states Connecticut, Maine, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Vermont, Arkansas, Louisiana, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Texas, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, and Nebraska. It's good to meet you all. I'll pass it along to my next colleague.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ollie Richards. I am the Program Specialist for Region 10, which includes the states of Alaska, Idaho, Oregon, and Washington. And I will pass it to Carlos.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carlos, and I am a Program Specialist with the Low Income Household Water Assistance Program and also SSBG. I oversee Regions 2, which is New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands, and Region 4, which is Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Tennessee. And I will pass it to Hannah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Hannah, and I am the SSBG Program Specialist for Region 5, which includes the states of Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, and Wisconsin, as well as Region 9, which includes the states of Arizona, California, Hawaii, Nevada, and the territories of American Samoa, Guam, and the Northern Mariana Islands. And I'm going to pass it along to Zach.
Hello, everyone. My name is Zach Eckstein, and I am the Project Director at WRMA for our SSBG Data and Technical Support contract. So we maintain the ssbgportal.net website where you go to submit your pre- and post-expenditure reports. And here with us also, we have my colleague, Amara Cragg, who is unable to introduce herself, but is one of our main leads at our help desk. So when you email us at support@ssbgportal.net, you're usually interfacing with her.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone, for introducing yourselves. It was great to see all of the names in the chat as you introduced yourself for everyone as well. The agenda for today's discussion is provided here for your information. We'll provide some general background about the office, where the Social Services Block Grant or SSBG is located. We'll give a broad overview of SSBG. We'll present the service categories for SSBG, clarify the purpose of the pre-expenditure report versus the post-expenditure report. We'll highlight the info that should be included in the post-expenditure report. We'll have Zach demo the SSBG portal access, and we'll provide some tips that you should use as you quality check your document prior to submission. And lastly, we'll answer any questions that you may have submitted to us in the Q&A section. And at this time, next slide, I'm going to turn over to my colleague, Josetta Alexander, who will talk to you a little bit more about what to expect today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Butler. The purpose of today's webinar is to provide training on the post-expenditure report, which is a required component to be submitted to the federal office by all states and territories. The report is due on March 30th, which this year falls on a Saturday. Therefore, we recommend that you submit the day before, which is Friday, March 29th. As we go along through this presentation, please do not hesitate to submit your questions in the Q&A function. You can use the chat function for general comments. The Office of Community Services, also referenced as OCS, is located in the Administration for Children and Families at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. OCS partners with states, territories, tribes, and community organizations, mostly through grant awards. OCS has several programs, including the Social Services Block Grant, also known as SSBG, which is designed to address the causes and impact of poverty. Today's training is a standalone training for the report due by March 30th. In the coming months, our office will launch a comprehensive SSBG training series for all our states and territory partners. So let's start by defining SSBG. SSBG is a federal grant program that awards grants to states and territories via formulas based on population. Grants may be flexibly used by states for a wide range of services and activities for children, youth, adults, seniors, and individuals with disabilities. Thank you. I will now pass it to Josiah, who will present on the service categories. Thank you.
Thank you, Josetta. There are 29 categories of services that are listed in law and defined in regulations or federal policies. We will look at those specific services and their umbrella groupings in the next slide. Of these services and activities, for child well-being, such as child protective services, to older adults and individuals with disabilities, congregate meals, or child care support, each state and each territory has the ability to design their own program. States determine the specific population to serve, the amount of grant funds dedicated to each service, and the proportions set. There is no federal mandate that tells the state how to design their program in this manner. As an example, if Florida has a large population of older adults and wants to dedicate a bulk of their SSBG services to this population, it is that state's discretion to identify the local needs, make their SSBG plan available for public input, and implement their individual use of SSBG. If you have any questions, feel free to add it to the chat and we will answer it at the end. Next slide, please. In this slide, you will see 28 defined service groups together under related activities called high-level service areas and plus others. The high-level service areas aid in describing how SSBG funds are used in our annual report and other policy data, which includes child welfare, youth at risk, daycare, children or child care, health and well-being, self-sufficiency, services to the disabled, services to vulnerable and older adults, and other support services. Grant recipients also separately report administrative costs. The graphic in this presentation simply groups the 29 service categories into similar or like services. Your reports are not grouped using high-level service areas, but use the individual service categories. These groupings are simply to analyze the annual data. Next slide, please. The SSBG post-expenditure report is submitted after the fiscal year closes on March 30th of each year. This report is the state's territory accounting for actual numbers of recipients and amounts allotted for services, the demographic information for the populations, whether child, adult, or older adult. This report is submitted via the SSBG portal. Later in the presentation, we will give you a visual demonstration of accessing the portal, and it is linked to the presentation, which will be sent to you after this meeting. I'll now pass it along to Carlos to explain more about the pre versus post-expenditure report.
Hi again, everyone. 1 second. You may wonder what the difference is between the reports submitted to the federal office by your state or territory. The pre-expenditure report projects how the state or territory will allot their social services block grant. Estimates are provided for the services to be provided, the populations to be served, and in what proportion in the pre-expenditure report. This report is part of your annual application for funds. It is developed and submitted before the fiscal year begins. The post-expenditure report details the actual services provided, population served, and in what proportion. This report is submitted after the program year. The post-expenditure report is compiled and analyzed to inform the SSBG annual report. And I just want to remind you all, if you have any questions about any of the information we have posed, to please use the Q&A feature, and we will go over the questions in the end if time allows. Let's talk about the information, what information should be included in the post-expenditure report. The SSBG post-expenditure report must include for each service funded by your state using SSBG. And this is the following: the number of individuals whose services were paid partially or fully using SSBG grant funds. For the territories, your consolidated funds under SSBG, for the purpose of the reporting, constitute SSBG grant funds. What's also needed is the amount for each service using SSBG funds, how the service was provided, whether it's public agency, private agency, or both, the service recipient status, whether child, adult 59 or younger, or 60 and older, the definition the state or territory used for child, adult, and family. The post-expenditure report should also include the eligibility criteria used to receive benefits, which includes the following: what income limits were set? Was there a sliding fee scale based on income? Was a training or school requirement associated with SSBG assistance? Did individuals receive public benefits such as the temporary assistance to needy families cash assistance program affect access? And now I will turn it over to Ollie, who will talk about the post-expenditure report content.
Thank you, Carlos. So speaking of TANF, did you know that states may transfer up to 10% of the temporary assistance needed for needy families grant to the SSBG and SSBG's guidelines? The post-expenditure report should record how much in TANF was transferred to SSBG, ensure that the population served by the transferred amounts and the service provided with the transferred amounts are included. A note of caution for audit purposes: states should have systems in place that track TANF transferred funds, because those funds are limited to serving individuals only up to 200% of the federal poverty level. Also, take care to note that the amounts recorded in the post-expenditure match the points and times recorded your state submits to the HHS using the form ACF-196R. This form goes to a different office, but we coordinate in the review of the TANF transfer. Next slide, please. The post-expenditure should identify any amounts carried over both from the fiscal year prior to the one reported and from the year of the report to the current year. So in this case, from fiscal year 2022 to fiscal year 2023, and from fiscal year 2023 to fiscal year 2024. Look to your pre-expenditure for fiscal year 2024 and post-expenditure from fiscal year 2022 to ensure that the amounts match with what was reported. And if there is any discrepancy, include any explanation as to why. We refer to the OMB model from 0970-0234 to submit your report to the SSBG portal. This information is hyperlinked in the action transmittal sent as a reminder. The form has places to input the information discussed by service. Over the next few minutes, our colleagues will do a demo of the SSBG portal and how to navigate and access the portal. I will now turn it over to Hannah, who will introduce you to the SSBG portal.
Thanks so much, Ollie. So what you'll see on this slide here should be a pretty familiar site to many of you. It is the web address and a screenshot of the homepage for the SSBG online data portal, which is what you'll use to submit your post-expenditure report. I'm actually going to briefly turn over this presentation to our colleague Zach at our Contract Support Unit WRMA for a demonstration on how to access and use the portal.
Great, thank you very much. Go ahead and share my screen here. Here we are on the home page of the SSBG website once you log in from that link that was sent to you. If you do not yet have an account or there needs to be a change in the accounts for your state, please use the authorized users form. You can get that through the resources or simply email support@ssbgportal.net and we'll send that form to you. You'll fill it out for each user that needs to use the SSBG portal in your state. So everyone who needs a current and active account must be on the list. And anyone who's not on the list, if they have an active account, will have their account deactivated. So we just maintain the current active users list. Once that's all settled, once you land on the website, the main places you're going to go to submit your data are up here in the Forms dropdown in our navigation bar. You'll see we have one place to submit each type of form. And we'll start with taking a look at the intended use plan. Currently, in order to submit your intended use plan, you'll complete a form fillable PDF and as well as including several other files that are required as part of this submission and upload all of that together in one zip file or as one PDF as your intended use plan submission. In order to do that, you'll use the year dropdown to select the correct year for which you want to submit your intended use plan. Ensure that the information on the right-hand side is correct for what you're looking for. Choose your file and submit. We'll take a look at the pre-expenditure report now. On our pre-expenditure report, we have the same year selection for which fiscal year this report is for. And when you do your pre-expenditure report, you'll let us know if you're reporting on a federal fiscal year or a state fiscal year. There are 3 tabs to these reports. We have the definitions tab, the expenditures tab, and the recipients tab. Starting on the definitions tab, we ask you to provide some contact information for some specific officials in your state for your program and your state CFO, as well as definitions of child, adult, and family for the services provided in your state, and complete some assurances that the funds are not extending past their 2-year expenditure period and that the use of funds for TANF is not only in line with the regulations, but also matches up with, as mentioned earlier, the ACF 196R form. For the most part, these are solid assurances that are easy to check off. And if you do have any questions about a particular one, you can always contact us at the support team or your program officer. Taking a look at the expenditures tab, here's where you're going to report your expenditures line by line for each of the 29 SSBG service categories. So we have adoption services on line 1, case management on line 2, and we have several columns in which you'll report. So the first 2 columns are going to be for your SSBG allocation that you receive each year, with the second column being if it's any carried from the previous year. So we have those separately. So our first one is for that fiscal year, the funds you received. And if you had any funds that you carried forward, you'll report that in column 2. The same thing goes for the next 2 columns. And these next 2 columns refer specifically to TANF transfer funds. So the first column is any funds you've transferred from TANF into your SSBG for this year. And then if you did that last year and carried forward any of those funds, that would be for column 4. Our carryover of funds transferred. Finally, the last column is our expenditures of all other federal, state, and local funds. If you do provide anything more than 0 in the first 4 columns, you'll also provide the full amount that your state has invested in that particular service category. If you do have all zeros, you can leave that line blank for that service. The total expenditures column will total automatically. You'll indicate whether or not these were provided through public or private institutions. And then you'll also go ahead and check to make sure that you've included all other federal, state, and local funds for this service category, so that making sure that your expenditures of all other federal, state, and local funds column is correct and complete. Down at the bottom, we have a few automatic sum columns, a row for administrative costs, and a space in row 34 for your funds to be carried forward. These spaces in row 34 cannot be left blank, so if you're carrying forward 0 funds, please make sure you indicate that by putting in a 0 here. Finally, on this report, we'll go to the recipients tab and see we have the same exact setup, except for this time it's for our recipients by age. We have columns for children, adults age 59 and younger, age 60 and older, adults of unknown age, and then a few total columns. You're reporting to us whether or not this data that you're reporting is actual, estimated, or sampled numbers, whether or not the counts for these services are duplicated or unduplicated, and then as well the eligibility criteria that you have for the services within this service category. Down at the bottom, if you do have any amount of funds and recipients that you report in category 29 for other services, you'll want to make sure that you list your other services down here in this box at the bottom. If you don't, when you try to submit, it will let you know that you are missing this descriptor and that you'll need to provide some amount of narrative about what those other services were. Very briefly, if we take a look at the post-expenditure report, we will see that it looks almost exactly the same as the post-expenditure report, and this is intended for comparison purposes. We'll give it a moment to load, but we'll see that we have all of the same fields in the definitions, expenditures, and recipients tabs. And when we go to submit this form, if there are some flaws or flags that are triggered, we will be informed about those by the system. We'll have a new tab that will be labeled validations that may have some questions about the number of recipients, or if there's a very low dollar per recipient amount, just to give some sort of narrative about those items, and then you'll be able to complete your submission for review to your OCS specialist. Form statuses go from not submitted to in process, which means you have done some amount of editing and saving your form, to when you submit it, review in process, which means that it is currently under review by OCS, and then finally either approved or accepted rather, and then resubmission requested. If your form is resubmission requested, you'll get an email about it automatically from the system, but you'll also be reached out to by your program specialist, who will let you know what issues they may have found with your report and what they'd like corrected or changed, or what they may have questions about. The last thing that I'll point you to is 2 places. Number 1 is going to be our resources dropdown in our navigation bar. You'll be able to view resources, which will include our user guide, as well as eventually a link that will go to a playlist where we have old webinars that review the entire functionality of the SSBG website. And finally, once all the data has been collected for the year, we have our newly introduced SSBG data dashboard, which is available from anywhere on the website, where you can review the previous fiscal year's data set and how that all plays out across the categories with some filters. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to go ahead and answer those about the portal specifically, but at this time, I'll go ahead and hand it back over to the OCS team.
Thank you so much for that amazing presentation, Zach. I'm going to give Carlos a second to pull the PowerPoint back up. Amazing. So before we draw to a close, I wanted to highlight a few things for quality checking purposes. Please make sure that all of the things I'm about to say are either listed or listed correctly on your post-expenditure report before you submit it, so that we don't have to ask you to resubmit it again. When you're filling out your post-expenditure report, please make sure that each of the service categories that are paid for by SSBG accounts for the number of recipients, the amount that was dedicated to the service category, the demographic breakdown for the recipients, and any eligibility criteria that may apply. Make sure that the total SSBG only expenditure category amount listed at the end matches the total amount of your SSBG grant award. And if you made use of the TANF transfer, please make sure that the total amount of the TANF transfer plus the SSBG award equals the total SSBG expenditure. For the territories, please make sure that you list the consolidated grants and programs and any amounts that apply to those. And also make sure that your carryover information is listed correctly on the post-expenditure report. Namely, make sure that the carryover amount used in this fiscal year that was carried over from the previous fiscal year matches both what is listed in the pre-expenditure report that you filled out earlier for this fiscal year, as well as the post-expenditure report that was filed in the previous year that should list the amount that was carried over from the previous fiscal year into this year. Sorry, that might have been a little bit of a roundabout way of saying that. Just make sure that the carryover numbers match from this post-expenditure report, your pre-expenditure report from this year, and the post-expenditure report from the previous fiscal year. And finally, if the SSBG point of contact has changed for your state or territory, please get in touch with your program specialist to let them know. And finally, on this slide are some key websites and email addresses for you. In case you don't have them recorded already, please take a second to write these down. Ideally, all of you would know who your program specialist is and how to get in touch with them. But if there's any uncertainty as to who your specialist is or how to reach out to them, please do not hesitate to look at the SSBG website or reach out to ssbg@acf.hhs.gov for inquiries regarding that matter. Next slide, please. And that brings us to the end of the presentation. So at this time, we will look into the chat and the Q&A for any remaining questions that you may all have and provide some answers.
Thank you, Hannah. We do have a couple of questions in the Q&A. Dr. Butler, your first question is, can prior year submissions be reviewed in the system? Or maybe Zach, you can answer that.
Yep, I'd be happy to. And the answer is yes. When you go to your form, when you go to that year selector for any of the forms you're on, whichever year you select is the year you will be viewing once it reloads. So any previous year's submission, or even download the previous year's submitted intended use plan, you can download those files as well. So yes.
Perfect, thank you. And our final question is, what is the SSBG budget for administrative costs?
Hello. So there is no preset required budget for administrative costs. However, there is a recommended limit on administrative costs. I believe it is no more than, currently it's no more than, I believe, about 4 to 6% for administrative costs, but allow me to confirm that after, and I will send out a note about the administrative cost limits. It's not a mandatory limit, of course, but it is associated with our performance measures for the social services block grant. And all of the questions and the answers will be shared with you for your information, as I'm sure other individuals may have some issues or questions and could benefit from the answers that are shared.
And Yolanda, sorry, this is Janelle. I do just want to point out for everyone, if you click on the Q&A tab, there you can click on the tab that says answered, and you will see the responses that SSBG has provided for some of the other questions that came from your colleagues.
So one of our colleagues, your colleagues, actually pointed out that it was 9%. I thought that we were making some adjustments to that in our budget documents, and that's why I wanted to check. I know that the official performance measure when it was established was no more than 9% as administrative costs, but consistently over the last several years, most of the states have been spending no more than around 4%, which is phenomenal for administrative costs and dedicating most of your resources for services. So thank you for that assistance. If you have any additional questions, feel free to follow up with us after this webinar, and we will be certain to provide answers. You may reach out to us via your individual analyst or via ssbg@acf.hhs.gov. I'll turn it over to Hannah at this time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Butler. So for individual state and territory matters, your specialist will reach out to you or your point of contact individually to address any specific questions or concerns you may have. But if there are no further questions at this time for this webinar, the Social Services Block Grant team thanks you for your attention to this webinar, and we look forward to receiving your post-expenditure reports no later than March 30th.